I'm just wondering, every year, doesn't it follow in the combine? I mean, it's sort of like a lot of the same stuff, but what's the theme? Is there a theme or an undercoat this year? Because every year it seems to be a theme of it. What would you say that this year's theme to you is, Hondo?
There are three, and I appreciate that question. That's another reason I love listening to you, is because you're not just a hockey guy, you're a sports guy. Three things have stood out. Number one, we have seen the devaluation of running backs. That's now changing. That's now beginning to rise. Saquon Barkley has raised the trend there, and I'm talking to a lot of general managers, executives, scouts, telling me there is a re-establishment of the running back position. I can tell you this is an incredibly deep draft. I think 4 running backs are going to go in the first round. I clearly Ashton Genty is a superstar. Now, I want to make this clear, because those guys in the basement whose girlfriend .jpeg is texting him telling her she just needs $200 extra to get her hair done because her kid died. Let me just say this to you. Ashton Genty is not Barry Sanders, but he is one of the rare players where he can do 2 or 3 things that you look at him and you go,
Hey,
Barry did that. So I'm not calling him Barry, but he is an elite running back. I think he may be the best since Saquon Barkley. But then you have Omarion Hampton, who is a beast, who's built like a beast. He's phenomenal. Travion Henderson is rising up draft boards. I think he's going to get in the first round. And the young man, I just can't remember his name. Forgive me. I've interviewed so many people, but from Iowa, he's up there going to go in the first round. So I think that's the first one. Number one is you're seeing a reestablishment of the running back position. And this may be one of the deepest running back classes in decades, not years, decades. There's going to be some really great backs picked way down deep in this draft. That's number one. The second thing is the quality of this draft. It is phenomenal at multiple positions. This is going to go really deep. Now, let me tell you why that impacts Detroit so big. Detroit is a good drafting team now. It's not actually, it's a great drafting team. There are always the bozos at the top who are there every year, who suck. It's just you wake up, and matter of fact, they just look and they're already eliminated from the playoffs, who are going to pick people in the first round that shouldn't be picked there. And this is such a deep draft. You're going to see first round talent picked in the second round. You're going to see second round talent picked in the third. So if you're sitting there and you are a Lions fan, you are thrilled today because you want all of these bad drafting teams because you draft well. And where you're sitting, you're going to get quality starters, quality players, and this is a humongously deep draft. But here's the third thing. This is one of the poorest draft classes in memory. Cam Ward is by far the best in the class. Reminds a lot of people of C.J. Stroud. But remember, there were question marks even with C.J. And so even though he's a good prospect and worthy of a first-round grade, I've talked to multiple people who've told me they have maybe 2 guys with a first-round grade, Jackson Dart being the other. But even that, it's a lower first round on Jackson. But there may be as many, I'm not predicting this, but there could be as many as 6 quarterbacks go because there's so many teams that terribly draft. I mean, listen, you may need a quarterback, but so you're going to go pay a guy first round money who's a 5th round developmental guy? Give me a freaking break. And that's where watching the quarterback position this year, and then everybody's talking about next year, could rival the greatest quarterback classes ever. Next year is completely loaded with quarterbacks, talented quarterbacks. I had one person tell me that they potentially thinks as many as 8 quarterbacks could go in the first round next year. That's going to be a huge one. So outside of quarterback, which is the most important position, this may be one of the deepest drafts of all time. But at quarterback, ooh, it's uglier than me in the shower, and it's why I turn the lights off, boys.
Hondo Carpenter, the Pure Electric Factory, Woodward Sports chat thread. Tommy K, Hondo should be on every week at least. This guy's electric. Spenny's Alan Bride. Can we get Hondo on more often? Absolutely, man. Hondo's the man. He covers the Raiders for Sports Illustrated. He's down in Indy right now for the Combine. All right, Hondo, I would want to touch on this too since we have you here. Ben Johnson was kind of in the news yesterday, and Lions fans took his comments of kind of a slight against Jared Goff and things like that. And I had talked to a source, and it became kind of a big deal where I talked to a source and said, hey, there may be more than meets the eye with the Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, triumvirate there. There may be more than meets the eye, and I talked to a source about that. But Hondo, when you look at it, because you're there, you have the stories all the time. Was Ben Johnson on the Raiders' radar as well? Was he a serious candidate for the Raiders' job?
Well, let me just tell you this. Not only was he a serious candidate, when his agent allegedly tried to make fun of it like he wasn't, I heard from multiple NFL people that said to me, he better hope it works out in Chicago, because the way he's burning bridges, nobody else is going to give him a second chance. Wow. And I don't think that this was a good fit for him in Chicago. So let me just say this. I have no axe to grind with Ben. I cover now multiple NFL teams as an NFL writer, and everyone I know that know Ben personally likes him personally. So I have literally no axe to grind here. But I'm going to tell you this. I know for a fact that he had reached out to people and talked about the Las Vegas Raiders job. I knew that the Raiders had not made an offer because they weren't allowed to, but the parameters of an offer had been discussed with agents. And I know for a fact, now this is not opinion, I know for a fact that people were being talked to about going to Vegas and if Ben potentially went there. He had not committed to go. The Raiders had not committed to hire him, but both parties were absolutely in on it. Both parties were absolutely close. He was the Raiders' original choice. Well, that's not true. He was the Raiders' first choice that they decided this is the guy we want. But he was doing a lot of revisionist history, which is fine. He can do whatever he wants. But I think Ben maybe has a little bit of an ego and needs to remember that it's called the NFL, not for long. And you can burn bridges all that you want. But here's the problem. There are very few guys that go someplace and spend the rest of their career. And when you want to get back in and you've burned bridges, it's not wise. And I talked about this, that NFL people were like, Ben just needs to shut up, be glad that he's in Chicago, but remember, go look at how everyone else does in Chicago. They fired Ditka. It's not like they're not going to fire his ass.
All right.
Well, you're the smartest guy in the room right now by a lot, and I'd be remiss. This sort of goes out to Spenny, to the fact of you covered the Sparties for a lot of years and stuff like this, and it looks like Tom Izzo's team coming in, but like 30,000 foot view and your perspective of what do the Sparties have a chance in this tournament, or is this team more of the Tom Izzo team going into tournament time? What say you? Because no one's seen more basketball than you over the years.
Well, a couple things I always laugh. My son is 19 years old and a sophomore in college, so his entire life he's known Tom and has watched Michigan State's success. And I always tell them when they get worried, oh, they're not going to make the tournament, they're not going to do anything. Relax. It's Tom Izzo. And you tell them that every year. Here's the thing about Tom Izzo that I love, and I know him personally, as I consider him a great friend. But here's what I love about Tom. He's a winner. And so when people underestimate him, so at the beginning of this year, I predicted them to be in the hunt for the Big Ten title and literally got mocked and laughed at by the young journalists, which is fine. It's why you make what you make and I make what I make, and I have a track record. And people can tell me, well, you're fat and ugly. Yes, but my wife's hot and I can lose weight. And so what I tell people is, but the issue is that Tom Izzo does a great job of building a team. Darren, I'm going to give you a great compliment. I was told once by one of your teammates that what made you great was that you were a great teammate. and that even guys you didn't like, if somebody screwed with them, you had their back. That if you had an issue with a guy, you did not hold back, but you didn't go put it in the media. You were a team guy. You're an Izzo guy. It's why Detroit loves you. It's why pure hockey fans love you. You're one of those guys. You're the guy. You are hockey. And Tom Izzo is that. He's basketball, and he builds a team around each other. And that's what has put Michigan State where they are. They are dangerous, but like anything, it's all about matchups. I'll tell you a quick story. You may remember when they were predicted by a lot of people to win the NCAA tournament, and they went against Middle Tennessee State and were upset, a massive upset. And I'll never forget this, because that night, Middle Tennessee hit, I don't even remember, but it was close to 80% of their shots. And I went back and watched that film 11 times, because as a journalist, I felt like if I'm going to comment on things, I need to be smart. Players don't mind you being critical, they mind you being stupid. And so I watched all the film, and I called Izzo, and I went over to his house, and I just said to him, I'm not trying to make you feel good. It's not my job. I mean, I'm your friend, but I don't know how you could have played that game any different. Your defense was great, and people are going to look at the 70-plus shooting percentage and think it sucked, but they were shooting past NBA three-point line. That's not on you. It's not on your guys. And it was just their night. And he's like, I can't say that because people are going to think I'm making excuses, but you're right. And you couldn't feel bad about that loss because that team played out of their mind. That's the game of basketball. And I'm going to tell you this, that Tom Izzo is underappreciated today, and he's not going to be fully appreciated till he's gone. He's underpaid, and I can tell you this, he has raised hundreds of millions of dollars for that university. If he simply said, put me on 10% of everything I raise, he would get a massive raise. And that basketball team is fun to watch. It's the sum of their parts. They're kids that love the game. They've built it the right way. And absolutely, I think they are a dangerous, dangerous team.
All right, Hondo, I know you're down there making moves and breaking stories and stuff like that, so I got two more for you here. Number one.
Great. Take your time. I got to tell you a great Lions story, though, before we go.
And that was going to be number one. Have you heard anything Detroit related? Because I know you still keep your ear to the ground, still have the connections. What do you got for me, Lions related? Any good nuggets?
I got a couple things. First, because as an NFL writer now, I'm keeping my nose to the ground and everything. So first of all, I was texting with a Lion player the other day, whatever day it was, Neil, that you had reached out to me. It was that morning I was texting with a player. And I said to him, what's the biggest difference in being in Detroit? And he said something that I think is phenomenal. He said, this is the first time I have been on a sports team where you feel family. It's always talked about in sports. He goes, but you feel it. And he goes, I never want to play anywhere else. If you guys knew who he was, that'd be a very big thing. But he goes, I never want to play football anywhere else or for anyone else. And he said, I absolutely love it here. And that's the culture that's been built. That is exactly from Sheila on down what they have built and what they have done. And I think that is a huge story, because here's the funny thing. I know several free agents, and I'm asking, who you hearing from? And they're like, man, I had 5 free agents tell me they've heard from several Detroit players. Dude, you got to come here. Dude, you got to play here. Dude, it's different. And here's the best thing. When's the last time you heard about Detroit players out recruiting free agents? And you're not going to have to overpay. That's a big one. But here's the second Detroit Lions story that you're going to absolutely go freaking nuts for. And the chat better blow up like a bunch of teenage girls who just won Taylor Swift tickets. So I was talking to one of the most respected GMs in the National Football League. And I said, what's your eye on Detroit? What do you think's going on in Detroit? He goes, I'm going to tell you this. All of these, and he used a word I won't use, but it had to deal with a feminine part of the body. He said, all of these blanks, he goes, out here whining because he lost coordinators. He said, the hardest thing is to build the team. He goes, but obviously the man's proven he can pick the right coaches. He goes, I don't care. I tell my coach, I don't care if we lose coordinators because you built it, build it again. The biggest question is, can you build it? Then when I know you can, he goes, I don't give a crap if we lose coordinators because I know my guy is going to be able to replace him. He said, all of these blanks, he said, need to grow up. He says, because Dan Campbell ain't letting the Detroit Lions go backwards. And the best ones now want to go coach for him because they now know if I want to be a head coach, I'm going to go be with Dan because Dan can get me there. He goes, the man lost 2 coordinators, but he built a freaking tree.
Yeah.
Hondo Carpenter, our guest, covers the Raiders for Sports Illustrated. All right, Hondo, last one for you. We had this asked in the chat. People wanted to ask you this as well, and it kind of coincides with what I was going to drive at. Since we have you here and you do cover the Raiders, what are they looking at doing? You said this is the weakest quarterback draft class in a long, long time. They need a quarterback. Would Aaron Rodgers come into play? That comes from DNC ENT in the chat. What's the Aaron Rodgers story? If not him, then what?
I think there's a good shot that they could end up with Matt Stafford, not reporting that as official, but I think there's a good shot there. I'd love to have Matt and Kelly back. But Matt Stafford is still playing at a very, very high level. He's a consummate teammate. And then they could go select maybe a Will Howard, and then they have Aiden O'Connell already, and then let him develop them both. I think that's a genuine possibility. I could see them potentially hurt. So that's also a possibility, but nothing has been determined yet. They have reached out to Matthew Stafford's people, but they're not going to do anything stupid. And let me just make it one point very clear, and this will make all your Wolverine fans happy. There will be no quarterback wearing the silver and black that doesn't have the stamp of approval of Mr. Thomas Brady, and he's going to be the guy picking the quarterback.
All right, there he is. He's an electric factory, people. Hondo Carpenter, our guy. Hondo, we're going to check back. Yeah, we're going to check back around the draft time if that's cool with you. Appreciate you as always, my friend.
Thanks, Hondo.
I love being on with you guys, and I just appreciate you. And Woodward is just the great voice.